welcome back to Room 237, and doing something a little bit different today. This is going to be a little bit of a different review. This is a film that I bought a few months ago, actually, while I was going through and buying all the Italian films. But going back to the extreme, I know my playlist of extreme horror is one of my most watched playlists. People, for whatever reason, can't get enough of the extreme films. But this is one that I've wanted to see for years, like at least a decade, ever since I first heard of it. And from a pretty notorious filmmaker. And it's a 2006 film, and it's Marian Dora's debut, Cannibal. This is from Germany. And this is a lovely set, too, that I got from Tetro Video. This was their version they did that was limited to 300 copies. Mine is 241. Comes in this, well, I'll hold it back here because I don't know if I can show it up close, but you kind of get the idea. Wonderful artwork. And yeah, it's great looking, which I bought at the same time as his most notorious film, Melancholy der Engel, or Angel's Melancholia, which this is another limited to 1,000 copies. Mine's number 31. This was not cheap. I had to get this off eBay. But this is known as the most, a lot of places call this the most messed up movie. Haven't seen it yet. I will get to it. It's kind of long, so I got to find the right time to watch it, but this was my first time seeing Cannibal, and like I said, I wanted to pick it up for years, but was never able to find it. Then I saw this set and was like, well, I guess it's now. So it was directed by Marian Dora, who, just a little bit about this guy, because he's pretty enigmatic. He kind of reminds me of like a Lucifer Valentine, but I think Valentine's a bit more elusive for his own reasons, but he's from southern Germany. No one knows his real name. He goes by a number of other pseudonyms. I'm not going to go through all of them, but like his most recent film, Carcinoma, he went by Art Doran. He first came out in the film scene in the early 90s. He was making short underground films, like he was on Blue Snuff 1 and 2, just like, which were anthologies. I guess Blue Snuff 2 was withdrawn because it was too extreme. But then he started working as a producer, editor, and second unit director for Uwe Lamel. And this was during they met in 96, and then they began a long partnership during Lamel's serial killer phase, his direct-to-video serial killer phase, like Green River Killer, BTK Killer, Killer Picton, also the film Zombie Nation, and Absolute Evil. Now, I'll say all those movies are bad. I mean, serial killer films are usually few and far between when it comes to good ones, and Lamel's are not really that good. They're actually kind of at the bottom of the pile. But then in 2004, he assigned Dora to make one about the Arwen Muse case, the guy who posted an ad on the internet asking for people to be cannibalized, and then the suicidal guy who wanted to be cannibalized answered it. They met up, and then it happened. It was a big case in Germany. He wanted to make a film about that, so Dora made the film really cheaply, and then when he gave it to Lamel, Lamel rejected it because it was too extreme and too gory. So then that was when Dora decided to release it himself, and it became his directorial debut. Ironically enough, Lamel in 2007 would make his version of this story, only he made it, it is kind of art housey, it's really weird, but he made it a straight couple, put it in America, called it Diary of a Cannibal, and I couldn't even finish it. It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Not in graphic content, just it was a piece of shit film. This, I'll actually say I was impressed by this film. I'll say it may not have as many shock scenes as, say, a Serbian film. But as I've said before, movies like a Serbian film are all shock value. They just put, hey, let's have, someone get raped this way. Let's have, like, a rape and a beheading simultaneously. Like, let's just put as much as we can in this film. And there's no real substance to help elevate it. Which is why I still think Salò is the most effective of the disturbing, shocking, controversial horror films. Or it's my favorite of the bunch, at least. This I would put up there with Salò. It was more effective than a Serbian film. And a lot of it is because of how it's filmed. It's a very quaint film. It doesn't quite have the art house look that, say, Salò does. Or at least, sort of the... can't believe I'm saying this name, but, the sort of Kubrick filmography, almost. Like, it doesn't have, like, that Oscar look to it, almost. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it does look like a very cheap direct-to-video film. But a lot of the camera angles, like, it's got a lot of tight close-ups or just odd, random angles. But the scenes when he actually gets to, like, when he starts doing his thing with this guy, it's like this fixed angle up in the corner of the room, which kind of gives it this security cam look that just helps add to the authenticity. And, I mean, it doesn't look found footage, or it doesn't look like a snuff film. It looks more like a student film. But just with how low budget it is and how realistic everything looks, it does help make it look more effective than something that looks like a movie. Obviously, you know everything's fake, and there's something oddly poetic about it, and especially like the score is just, other than the classical music, it's got just like these dark, ominous tones. Now the cast, there's really only two people. There's the character, the man and the flesh. That's really it. I mean, we have some minor supporting characters in the beginning, because like the first act is the man going out with different male suitors. There's very little to no dialogue. There's very little dialogue. In fact, you could almost get this in German with no subtitles, and you really wouldn't miss anything. And while he's going out with all these different guys, like, we don't even hear their conversations. It's actually usually filmed from a distance, or like from outside a restaurant window, which again kind of gives it like we're following this killer. But it also kind of reminded me of The Vanishing, which the killer kind of looks like the guy from The Vanishing, but it's kind of like a banality of evil, like that movie was. He's an ordinary looking guy who kind of has an ordinary life. He just has this fantasy, then seeks it out and does it. And he either rejects them for whatever reason, or they reject him. One guy even slaps him. And it's all told visually, like I said, like no dialogue, which is another thing that makes it more effective. So then he puts in his ad. He watches, the tapes from slaughterhouse and autopsies. he acquires this one house that he pre-sets up for the slaughter, and then he goes to pick up the flesh, brings them to the house, and we do get a lot of scenes of, like, they're both naked for the rest of the movie, and from here on out, I'm gonna be getting fairly graphic with the descriptions, so consider this a spoiler / graphic content warning. So if you're not a fan of the most graphic type of films, I definitely wouldn't check this out. Or if it's also very sexually graphic, we do see these two guys have sex quite a bit in this film. A lot of naked penis throughout the film. If that makes you uncomfortable, I definitely pass on it as well. So consider this the warning. But, well, actually, but I mean, if you do like movies like Sallow, I would put this up there with that for just being the most effective. Because, again, it doesn't feel like a movie that's trying to be shocking. Like, a Serbian film feels like it's trying too hard. These two kind of make it seem effortless, and which kind of gives me hope for this film when I finally get to that. And I will say, when we actually see the gore, it is pretty realistic. Some of the most realistic I've seen. It's up there, if not better, than like the August Underground. And when I say gore, I mean like intestines and organs being pulled out. It pretty realistic looking. So now, getting into it. So after they have sex a bunch, the flesh decides it's time for him to be killed and eaten, and his first request is that the man bites his penis off, which is part of the man's fantasy anyway, because earlier on, while he's just kind of vicariously doing all this stuff in his own home, he takes something, I don't know if it's like wax or what, but he makes a fake one, puts it on a statue, and he goes and bites it off. But here, he tries, but he can't bite through it. And I mean, we see it up close. I mean, it's right there. He can't bite through it. The flesh is willing to leave. He keeps chastising him, calling him weak. The man begs him to stay. He gives him one more chance. And the guy, the flesh is taking like a bunch of NyQuil, and he drinks a bunch of whiskey and pills to kind of put him to sleep, because he doesn't want to feel anything. Even though later on, when he's in the tub bleeding out, he says, you know, I want nothing to relieve me. But, oh, and he's filming the entire thing. So then when they're back up there, he commands him to castrate him. So he takes a serrated knife. He does cut it off. And this I thought was pretty wild. He cuts it, and we see the stump. And he's still able to ejaculate out of it into a glass. And then, you know, he has the guy downstairs. They fry it up. They eat it. And I mean, that's pretty gross, because the flesh he's chewing on it, but it's like, you know, he's bleeding to death. He's shaking, and it's just kind of like drooling out of him. The man takes a bite, but he doesn't like the taste of it. I'm surprised he didn't say, "No, it tastes like dick." And you can tell the flesh is upset. But then he puts the flesh in a bathtub, which is probably the most famous image from it. It was on, I think, the first DVD that was released. And thinking he'll bleed out. And we see there's a lot of dissolve cuts or fade cuts to show that time has gone by. He's reading to him from a magazine. He's giving him more whiskey. Then finally, when he thinks he's gone, he gets him out of the tub, brings him downstairs, and he's getting him down to the cellar to clean him out. And this is a wild scene too, because and it all looks like one shot, or at least to a point. You know, like he's walking, and I mean, he's trying to hold the guy. They're facing each other, but like he has to keep like shuffling him and shifting his weight. There's and every time he does it, it's like he's. And I thought this was a nice detail that they added, because at first the body looks stiff as hell, because he takes him out of the tub and he falls and lands on top of him, and that body looks stiff. I mean, he looks dead. So like every time he goes like this, he's shifting everything, and everything's letting go. There's up close of him with just like vomit coming out all down him. He gets him down the stairs, and every time he goes like this, he shits himself. It looks like he squirts diarrhea out. It's pretty wild. It's pretty gross, but considering he's dead, or at least at this point we believe he's dead. So every time he, kind of shifts his weight, he's moving everything around that needs to be released. So it's gross, but it was a nice detail for, to make it look more authentic. And he finally gets down to the basement, and that basement must have been freezing, because we see breath, and he realizes the flesh is still alive. He's gasping, he's shaking. So he relieves him by stabbing him in the throat. Then he hoists him up, he guts him out. I mean, when he takes the intestines out, they look pretty real. And again, some of the most real I've seen. And he just keeps going till it's nothing but a spinal cord and a rib cage. At one point, he just kind of like leans on, he's like hugging and caressing the hanging rib cage. Which, I mean, stuff like that to just show how demented this guy is very subtle, quiet, visual storytelling like that can make a movie like this way more effective than something like a Serbian film. Which is, I'll probably find myself saying that with a lot of films, more effective than a Serbian film. Because it really does come down to how it's filmed, whether it's more realistic or not. And what I mean by how it's filmed, like whether it looks like a very high quality, well shot, beautiful cinematography film, like Sallow, or if it's this super low budget guerrilla style film like this with like a lot of realistic effects and details. But also just, yes, this was a true story, or at least, and I mean, you can look up the facts about this story. There's interviews with Muse that you can find online. It was all filmed in real life like it was here. But, someone meeting someone online, then killing and cannibalizing them, that's definitely more, even if that wasn't a true story, easier to believe than this secret organization that makes pornographic snuff films and then is like hostile but snuff films like a Serbian film. If it's more believable, that makes it more effective as well. And then he dumps the parts he can't eat in the ground, buries it, makes this beautiful, fancy, dinner with candles and all the trimmings, puts the guy's head at the head of the table. He eats the guy, and then it ends with him pleasuring himself to the video footage he made, and then him in his suit, like his suit and briefcase, and going to work for another normal day, kind of going back into society, back into everyday life. And his book ended by a woman's voice reading Hansel and Gretel's story. And I mean, it goes by at a good pace. It does drag at some points, like especially like the scenes where they're just like having sex for seemingly nonstop. But I mean, when the real gruesome shit starts with trying to castrate via teeth and then via knife, and then still showing the money shot coming through the stump. That's how it starts. You're wondering, how is this movie going to keep topping itself? And it does it in a very realistic, effective way, which I commend it for. It doesn't seem like a movie that's trying too hard. It doesn't have that edgelord, kind of in your face, trying feel that movies like a Serbian film or even Snuff 102 has. So, I mean, I can't say it's a great film. It's very successful at what it is trying to do, or at being what it is. But, I mean, I can say I'm glad I finally saw it. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I mean, it's a movie I wanted to see for 10 or more years. I actually heard it had more gruesome, shocking scenes than I thought. Like, I thought, from what I've heard, there was like the castration scene and then just where he's strung up. But there was a lot more that I thought was going for it than just those two scenes. So, yeah, I was surprised at how effective it was, and I'm glad I have it in this very nice, well put together set. Number 241 of 300. So yeah, it does make me want to check out his other films like Carcinoma. He does have, I think it's called a debris documentaire or something like that. It looks like it says a debris documentary. I can't remember exactly how it's pronounced, and it does kind of get me more ready to see this. Again, this is pushing 3 hours. It's over 3 hours. Almost. 2 hours and 44 minutes. So I'm not sure when I'll be able to see this, but I definitely am looking forward to when I can. But yeah, so that is Marion Dora's debut film, Cannibal. And as far as the extreme films go, these are the only two that I have that will be coming anytime soon, except for, I do have, I think it's Inferno. I can't remember which one I already reviewed. Because I have, Inferno of Torture and Shogun's Joy of Torture. I can't remember which one. Okay, I did this one, so it must be Inferno of Torture that I still have to review. And I would like to get the American Guinea Pig movies, and then maybe at some point I'll get to the Faces of Death series. But I've got a lot of other things that I'll be doing, so yeah, 2006's Cannibal. And thank you for watching.